Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to episode 5 of the Vampire Diaries. This is the big one. And I want to clarify on something real quick I said last week. I know that Stefan knew that the herb would not affect Caroline. Like, of course, we know that it only affects vampires. I understand that he knew that, and that drugging her in that way wouldn't actually do any damage to her or anything. But it's not about whether or not it hurt her. It's the fact that he actively used her as a tool to get to Damon. It's the fact that he manipulated events, he manipulated everything to allow Damon to get angry enough to attack her, so that when he did, he would drink her blood, which would have the herb in it. Therefore, he was literally making it so that Caroline would get hurt or possibly even killed, just to get back at Damon, just to get him taken down. Because there is nothing there that would have stopped Damon from killing her. Nothing about that would have stopped that. He could have easily, and it would have been perfectly in his character to do so, to kill her right there. We know he's killed before, like he killed the coach, for one example. So it's not out of the question that he would have done that. And considering Stefan was manipulating everything to make him upset, it's like, oh yeah, that very easily could and would have possibly happened. So the fact is that Stefan was basically using her as a possible sacrifice. At the best case scenario, a tool to get actively injured just to get to Damon, which is, no matter how you look at it, fucked up. No matter how you look at it, it's an absolutely disgusting, fucked up, evil thing to do. Like, yeah, Damon himself has done some terrible, evil, fucked up shit. Like, he has. And it's fair enough to want to rein him in and bring him down. But trying to do it like this is so actively wrong that you can't, like, there's no way to look at it in any kind of moral or ethical way. There's no way to see it as anything but completely, like, disgusting and horrible. I understand the drugging itself wouldn't have hurt her, and that he knew that, but he still manipulated events to where she would either get hurt or die, and he didn't care, because all that mattered to him was getting Damon reined in. Therefore, to him, the ends justified the means. And that is an extremely toxic, evil mentality to have in situations like this. So I just wanted to clarify that to make sure, like, you understood that I wasn't, like, just complaining about, like, just the fact that he drugged her alone. It was everything kind of surrounding it. But like I said last time, there was a lot of other reasons too why I didn't like that episode, why I actively did not like it and see it as the worst episode of the show. It's not even like, the boring aspect of it really wasn't even the biggest issue. I can deal with an episode being kind of boring every now and again. as long as that's not like every episode. That was honestly not really that much of a thing for me. It was the actual problems and the anger it made me feel towards characters who are clearly supposed to be seen as the good guys, at least as of right now. I don't know whether they change that up in the future. It's possible. There are shows that have done that. There are series of movies that have done that. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, anyone watching this, but there was this series of movies called, I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was something along the lines of Jack Kirby Time Warrior. There are these cheesy ass, like, B movies about this kid who traveled, like, through time and had to deal with all these wacky scenarios and shit. And that was basically the big twist of the series of movies. By the end, the like old professor guy who was helping him ended up being the actual bad guy, and the guy he thought was the bad guy was actually a good guy the entire time. It was a big twist, and I don't remember all the details about it because it's been a long time. My grandmother used to have those movies. For all I know, she might still. But I used to watch those all the time when I went to her house, and yeah, again, I don't remember everything, but I do remember at least a little bit about it. And that part always stood out to me. Just the fact that there was that big twist in there that I never saw coming as a kid. But granted, I was a kid. There was probably a lot of hints to it, and if I were watching it as an adult, I would probably like be like, oh yeah, it was obvious, but I don't know. But the point is, yeah, it's like they could take that route in this series, where Damon ends up actually being kind of the good guy, and the bad guy ends up, and Stefan ends up being the bad guy in the end. But for right now, that's not what you're supposed to see it as. And it kind of goes very back and forth on Stefan and Elena's relationship constantly. There's like no consistency to it at all, so it just feels very forced. And every time they get back together after having some issue pop up, it's just annoying, and I'm not liking Stefan as a character anymore because of the reasons I stated. Damon, it's like kind of backtracked on the development he was getting, and even if an intentional choice for story and character reasons, it felt wrong. And then, while I'm liking certain characters more and more, like the one girl who's like descended from the Salem witches, I can't think of her name at the moment. Did it start with a B? I'm not sure. But I'm liking her more and more. I like Caroline. But then there's characters like even Elena. It's like I'm just starting to like kind of grow tired of her. And then it just suddenly out of nowhere brought in this entire secret society plot, and it's just like I really didn't like the last episode. Like I actively disliked it. Even up to the point of saying I hated it. Just hopefully this episode changes things, because as I said, this is kind of the big episode. This is the episode that's going to determine whether or not I continue. And there are multiple reasons why I have to do this. For those who may not fully understand how I do things on the channel, just to explain it, I have this strict policy on my channel where I do not continue to watch a series if I'm not enjoying it, because I feel that it severely harms the overall quality of the reaction, as well as harms my own mental and emotional health. To continue watching something that I actively dislike or just can't get into, it just puts me in an increasingly negative mood that I really should not be putting myself in. For my own sake, for my own mental and emotional health, as well as just, again, for the quality of the reaction, so it's just not me bitching every week. if a series, if I don't like it, or if I just can't get into it and whatnot, I drop it. And I'm willing to check out anything. I'm not like one of the reactors who like, oh, I'll only check out a show if it already interests me or whatnot. No, I'm willing to check out anything, pretty much. And it's like, if it doesn't end up interesting me, if I don't end up liking it, then I don't. A lot of shows on this channel I do follow through on. There are plenty of shows that I do follow through on and continue all the way. Some that even surprise me, like Fire Force. And some that are like, oh yeah, this is definitely my kind of shit, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But then there's this series, and it's just like, it's been very inconsistent for me. I liked the first episode, didn't love it, I had some issues with it, but I liked it. The second episode I didn't like. Third episode I loved. Fourth episode I hated. So it's like, it just this level of inconsistency, and the fact that it's kind of going back and forth, it's not a good sign for a series for me. And I usually like to determine these factors for a series, especially a long-running series like this, earlier on. I don't want to try to force myself through as much as possible just to try and do it. It just ends up feeling, well, forced that way. And that always ends poorly for the quality of the reaction and my mental and emotional health. And I do have to take that into account when making these videos. So if I do end up dropping this, I will apologize ahead of time. I am genuinely sorry if you love this series or whatnot and everything. But it's not something that I feel comfortable continuing if I don't enjoy it enough to do so. Hopefully, this episode turns me around. And hopefully, I do want to continue it. But I think after the last episode, this episode really has to impress me to do so. And with the inconsistencies and everything, and just in general, as I've stated in the past reactions, this kind of series isn't really the kind of series I tend to get into in the first place. Teen dramas with romance and everything like this, not my kind of shit, usually. Even with the vampire aspect, because I do like vampires, but even with that aspect, it's not doing enough for me so far to really get invested in. So this next episode, episode 5 here, has to impress me. It has to really turn me around on my thoughts so far. And that is very possible. I've seen shows do that. There are plenty of shows that take a few episodes to really get going. And it's just like, it'll start slow, it'll start a little weaker, but then all of a sudden it just kind of explodes into something a lot better. Like, even shows that I do like the beginning episodes of, like Steins Gate. Steins Gate's first episodes are kind of slow. I like them. I think they're great. But they're, compared to where it goes, it is very slow. And after a few episodes, it really just kind of bursts into something much greater and much more exciting. But it does start off a little lesser. And that's not to, again, I like the first episodes of Steins Gate, but it's just as an example. They're not as good as the later episodes. I can't think of any series offhand where I just actively did not like the early episodes, and then later episodes, and then after later episodes, I started to love the series. Because usually, like, that doesn't tend to happen, for me, at least. Like, even stuff like Owl House and all, it's like, I dropped that, but not because I wasn't enjoying what I was seeing. I actually very much was. I dropped it because of other stupid reasons that I just kind of was getting annoyed by. And then I ended up picking it back up again anyway. And Amphibia is not quite there yet because it's like at the point where I got so far, although I'm enjoying it more, I would not say I love the series yet as a whole. There's only been like a few, like 2 or 3 episodes that I've really liked. So I can't even use that as an example. But either way, I'm hoping for the best here, especially as a donation reward series. Um, and mind you, like, this can just tend to happen. Like, this was a show that even the donator acknowledged wasn't sure if I would like it or not. And it was more of just a personal choice because the donator loves this show. And that's fine. And that's great. That's awesome. But it's like, just with any show I react to, whether my choice or a reward, it's like again, I'm not going to force myself through it and hurt my own mental and emotional health. That's I already have issues with. I'm not going to do that. And again, most of the time, I would even say most of the time things tend to work out. There's just some shows that just don't click with me. And unfortunately, that's just going to happen. So, again, I apologize ahead of time if I do end up dropping this. If not, then hopefully that is a good sign. But if it does, we'll just continue on. We have more shows to check out, more shows to get back to, more seasons of, and we'll have plenty of stuff to do in the meantime. But in the meantime, we're just going to get this started because we've rambled on long enough. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black, then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, there were a couple of things I noted last time that I felt like needed to happen, or at least should happen, to really win me back over with this series. And there were 2 specific ones that really stuck in my head in the time since I recorded that last episode, that were like, oh yeah, these are the 2 very specific things that kind of need to happen. And neither of them did. The first is we needed to have follow-up on the Secret Society. You can't just drop that out of nowhere in the way that they did and just kind of leave it hanging. The only thing we got with that in this was the reporter taking the watch from Jeremy's room. We didn't actually get any real follow-up on the Secret Society. We don't get anything about or with them. We have him and the cop lady, Carolyn's mother, talking very briefly, but nothing is actually really explored in that. It's like they acknowledge that the Secret Society exists, but they don't actually follow through on it at all, really. The second thing, and the more important thing, is I did say that Stefan needed to tell her, and that he needed to be open and honest with Elena for the first fucking time, and he needed to tell her. And he very much refused to in this episode. And while Elena seems to have figured it out herself, and it's likely that Stefan is going to come clean just because she kind of already figured it out, it's bullshit that she had to figure it out on her own. The fact that Stefan actively, hid everything from her, all of this stuff that it is like very much kind of need to know, especially when she's super questioning and like just extremely against you, like constantly. Like you're breaking her trust in so many huge ways. It's like, yeah, obviously I get it. You don't want to tell a person you're a vampire. Of course, like would they even believe you and everything? But I mean, he could prove it. So, um, but at the same time, it's like, think about it. They're having active trust issues, and they're on again, off again, constantly. If he truly cares for her and wants to be in her life, he wouldn't be hiding this. By continuing to hide it and by continuing to refuse to answer her properly when she asks for explanations and just throw off all these bullshit lines, all it does is make you super untrustworthy and unlikable as a character. And what he did in this episode actually pissed me off a little bit in its own right, because it's like he's like, oh, I'm gonna come clean to you, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna actually tell you about myself. The shit he tells her is so like unimportant, random bullshit. I think Seinfeld is the best American TV show, but I Love Lucy, that's a classic. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Who gives a shit what your favorite TV show is? I don't think she cares, or at least she shouldn't. No, it actually seems like that was making a difference to her. Like that was actually him opening up. No, it fucking wasn't. None of that matters. None of that has any relevance to anything. Him telling her what his favorite shows are or whatnot is not important, and that is not relevant to trust issues. The only thing he opened up with about himself and about actual things that matter is he opened up about his feelings towards Caroline, but in such a, like, just nothing way. Like, he's like, oh, Caroline was very pretty. I liked her. I did some things I regret. I should have apologized before she died. Okay, you didn't really say anything with that. You didn't actually... You didn't fix anything. You didn't tell Elena anything about you with that. You told her about your long lost love. Nothing about you. Nothing you said in this episode restores the trust that you breached. In fact, it actually makes it worse because you're continuing to actively hide it while pretending and manipulating Elena into thinking that you are opening up to her when you're not. Not to mention the very antagonistic, like, way that he holds Damon captive and everything, and just the way it's presented in this is very much like he is the villain here. He's the monster, and Damon is the victim. Like, that's just how it's presented. And yes, obviously Damon is a bad guy too. He clearly, like, attacks and most likely kills Vicky at the end here. And he's, again, killed other people too and everything, but it's like, again, they kind of just went back on the development we were seeing from him, and it's like, even if you want to say, like, oh, it's going to take some time for him to open up and show his humanity again because he's forsaken it for so long, it's like, okay, but then why bother showing his humanity so soon? And not deliver anything more on that since. It makes no sense to me to do it that way. And it's like, this season is like 20 something episodes long, and I with the way this is going, the way it's being paced out in terms of people learning stuff and everything, and it's probably not gonna even have enough revealed by the end of the season, or if it is, it's going to be in the last few episodes. Because it's like, the show is just refusing to actually answer questions properly too. And it's annoying me. Not to mention there was some other stuff in this episode that just annoyed me too. The continued quote unquote relationship between the aunt and this secret society guy who's posing as a reporter, I guess you could say, or whatnot. It's like they had a relationship years ago that is explicitly stated to have been extremely toxic to the point where she fled, not just left, fled the town. And they're just basically back together. Like, let's be honest, like they're basically back together. There's no questions about that. And we're just supposed to be okay with that? Like, the fuck? Like, they're even joking about how they had sex in a car in the parking lot like years ago and everything. It's like, this is not okay. This is extremely toxic. And what are we supposed to be feeling here? Because if we're supposed to think it's cute or nice or anything, I'm sorry, but fuck that. That is not cute or nice. That is everything the opposite of that. And the show doesn't make us, clearly doesn't present it as if we're supposed to be disgusted and horrified by it. But we are. At least I am. People should be. It's absolutely horrible. The best part of this episode was honestly Bonnie. Just learning more about her powers and being overwhelmed by them, and like she's like one of the few characters I actually give a shit about. Her and honestly Caroline are the two characters I honestly care about in this at the moment. Like, Elena is a fucking moron. Like, she has to be to think that Stefan opened up to her to any real degree. And the way she keeps like floundering back and forth like to and away from him is just like, you really don't see the problems with this, do you? You really don't see how toxic and destructive and wrong this is, do you? Stefan is extremely unlikable. Honestly, he's more unlikable than Damon right now. Like, Damon's kind of shitty too, but at least he's open about it. At least he doesn't hide it or try to pretend he's not. At least he's more or less honest about who he is. Like, even when he's talking to other people who don't know, like, how terrible he is, he's very much not hiding his assholery. He's very much proudly displaying it. And the fact that people don't pick up on that is really fucking weird in and of itself. There's also the subplot in here with Jeremy and I said her name before, Vicky. And it's just like, did Vicky change? Like, Vicky was like, yeah, she did drugs and everything, but she was never like this hardcore, obsessive, addictive druggie like she was in this episode. In fact, it actually seemed like she was against that. Like, she was against the idea of like being seen as like, oh, you just like me because of the drugs and stuff like that. And it's like, and now all of a sudden it's like you're just all drugs all the time, gonna party in a graveyard, get high off of your boyfriend's sister's old pills, and it's like, what the fuck? When did you suddenly change? When did you suddenly become a completely different character? It's like I don't even really feel bad for her potential death at the end of this episode, because it's like she feels so drastically different from how she was portrayed in the other episodes that it's like I feel like I just met a character and they died like in this episode, and it just doesn't matter because I don't know the character. So it's like, what? And Jeremy has been kind of flip-flopping back and forth himself, and he's clearly struggling with a lot of how to handle situations and how to handle his emotions and everything. He's not doing his, at least is more understandable, where in this episode he's just like trying to move away from all of that. Honestly, that makes sense with how his character's been going. But hers just is like just sudden character change drastically. And it's just, what? Where did that come from? I'm just like really confused the entire time I'm like watching those scenes, and it's like, who are you? Like, you're not the Vicky we've met in the previous episodes. That's very much clear. And then Zach's dead. That's a thing. Because Caroline was, I guess, partially being controlled by Damon. His influence was still there. He was influencing her, and it was just enough for him to escape and snap Zach's neck and everything. And it's like, again, you make this very big effort of humanizing him, and then you completely turn around on that. If you're going to humanize him so early, you have to have little bits of follow-through to make it show that there is still human in him, despite the evil and horrible shit he's still doing. You still have to show the little bits of human there. And you could say, oh, but this episode showed him as a victim to Stefan and everything, showed him as, like, being, like, brought down because of that. And it's like, even during that, though, he was, like, still being an asshole during the entire time. Like, smart-assing Stefan, and then using the little bit of influence he could muster to get Caroline to come in and free him just so he could snap Zach's neck and escape. And it's like, you're not helping your case here, my dude. And then, again, I've never seen the entire sexy car wash thing in real life. I mean, and I'm not saying it hasn't happened or anything. I've just never seen or even heard of that happening in real life. Only just in, like, movies and shows and whatnot. Video games, I guess, sometimes. But it's more than that, more than just not ever really, like, hearing or seeing about that in real life. It's like, these are teenage girls, you know. These are, like, what, 16, 17-year-old girls? Maybe even some of them are 15. And they're making a big point in this episode. Caroline's like, oh, we gotta dress sexy. We gotta be as slutty as possible. And it's like, making a big point of that. It's like, ew. I'm sorry, but no, ew. And again, this is the kind of thing a lot of these teen dramas do. For some reason, a lot of them make a very big focus on sexuality for these girls. And it's like, yeah, of course, a lot of teenage girls do explore that kind of stuff in real life. Of course. But you can acknowledge that without, one, actively showing it, and just being gross in that regard, and two, without, like, having them actively take part in the show. You can acknowledge that they're questioning things and exploring things without making a huge point of, like, oh, let's show off these teenage girls in sexy bikinis and I'll show off all of their cleavage and everything. It's like, and again, even if the actors are of age, it's still fucking gross. It's still really gross. Like, it's one thing with animation where it's like they're not actual people and everything, so you don't have that kind of connection. Because with animation, it's like most of the time it's not based in any sense of reality as it is, especially with the way people move and their body shapes and sizes and everything as well. Animation can get away with a lot more because it's much more removed in that regard. But even so, I've talked about my displeasure about fan service for the sake of fan service in that regard, in even anime and cartoons and whatnot. I talked about that with Fire Force, for example. And that's a character who's of age, too. So it's like it's just when it's a live action show, when it's real people portraying teenage girls doing shit like this, and it's just really gross to me. And it's like I can't understand how anyone would think that's okay. Like even the actors portraying it, how would you think that's okay? Like that's like again, it's not even so much that they're wearing two-piece swimsuits or whatnot. Like that's one thing, that's fine. But they made a very concerted effort to talk about how they needed to be sexy, and how the theme of this was to be basically as slutty as possible and shit. And it's just like really just upsetting to me. And there were multiple points in this episode where I really genuinely thought it was over. Like there was a point like when she found out, like she had seen, Elena saw the video and everything, and it like the way it cuts, the way it like the music cut and everything, I thought that was the end of the episode. I looked at the timer and it's like, oh my goodness, we still have some time to go. And it's like, wait, really? There's still more to this episode? That felt like the end. In terms of like narrative pacing and everything, that felt like the ending of the episode. There's still more? And it's like there was points throughout this where it's just like I'm just checking the timer and surprised at how much there's left to go. And it's just I think it's pretty clear that this episode did not redeem this series for me. Like I think the one thing that would have saved it and would have at least made me want to check out more is if Stefan came clean himself and it was not up to Elena to have to, find out information about the person she's on again, off again dating by literally using her aunt's, for some strange reason, boyfriend to get into the news station to check out old news broadcasts. And it's like she literally had to do her own digging because Stefan refused to be honest. And it's just like, that's what really got me about this episode more than I think almost anything else. Just the continued dishonesty and the way he was dishonest. The active way he continued to be dishonest while pretending and manipulating Elena into thinking he was opening up pissed me off, honestly. Because, again, at this point, with the things she has actively noticed, and he knows she has actively noticed, I think it would be better if he had told her. The fact that he hasn't, it's like, even if he does admit it now that she's come to him and asked him, even if he does admit it now, like, let's be honest, she's not going to be okay with it because he didn't tell her. If he had told her, if he had opened up, if he had been honest with her, she probably would handle it great. Well, maybe not great, but better. But now she's probably going to freak out. She's probably going to, well, let's be honest, she's going to be back with him before the end of next episode. She's going to be fine. Because she, for some reason, is so flip-floppy, she can't leave him despite all the red flags. Despite how toxic their relationship is. And again, if you love this show and if you find things to love about it, and especially in future episodes and seasons and whatnot, that's fine. But it's like, this show is actively upsetting me in a very notable way. Since I recorded the last episode, episode 4, it's been weighing on my mind pretty heavily. And I've been like really antsy about getting to this episode, getting to episode 5. Because I've been kind of really needing to see if it actually got any better. It's been bothering me that much. And now it's just like it's worse to me after this episode. And it's like I just did not like this episode pretty much at all. And it's like, again, except for maybe the Bonnie stuff and maybe a couple jokes or whatnot made me laugh or whatnot. But it's like the actual shit that went down just actually angered me more. And as I stated in the pre-thoughts, I will not watch a show. I will not continue to force myself to watch a show that I am, one, not enjoying, but also one that is actively, like, negatively influencing my emotions and mental state. If a show is, like, actively negatively affecting me like that, to where it's, especially to where it's actually, like, staying in my head for a good period of time after like that, it's like that's not okay to me. That's something I can't quite reconcile with. So I need to put an end to this. And I apologize to Smurf who donated for it. I apologize to everyone else who has been keeping track of this reaction series and everything, who's been watching along and giving their thoughts in the comments. I do thank you all for that. But it's clear that this show is not for me. It's clear that it's just going to continue to make me upset. And yeah, it'll probably have many more good episodes, even great episodes. And hell, after a certain point, it may get much, much better. But the fact of the matter is, this is like, what, 8 seasons long? 7, 8 seasons long? Something like that? Again, I'm not going to force myself through whatever many episodes it takes to get to that point. When so much about it is legitimately angering me. I'm not going to force myself through the sludge just to get to something that may shine. That's not healthy in my eyes to do. And so I think I do have to end up dropping this. I really, really do apologize. And it's like, I'll probably, if you want to talk about it, Smurf, and we can like talk about it and think about something, like just message me on Instagram, I guess. But yeah, it's just I can't do this. For my own sake, for my own mental state, my own emotional state, it's legitimately causing me a lot of anger that I am not comfortable with. I don't like being angry, and I really don't like being angry to a point where it's actively affecting me in the days after. It legitimately bothers me when something does that. And this show doesn't have enough positives to even balance that out with me. Like, there are shows that I love that have done, like, that have left me really heated and stuff after events. But because they have enough good to balance them out, I'm okay with it sometimes. But this one, it's just like, there's not enough for me to actually like about this show. Most things are angering me. Most things are bothering me. It's not like One Piece where it's like, yeah, okay, something might anger me at a time and it will really stick with me, but it's like most everything I see in One Piece is going to give me just a massive boost of joy. It's not like that at all. It's like watching this is becoming just actively upsetting to do. So again, I very much do apologize. And again, if you want to discuss this, Smurf, and like everything, we can chat about it in like Instagram message or whatnot. But we do need something to move on to from this. And this is still a donation reward slot, so we will still obviously be moving on to another donation reward. And so, starting next week, since we still don't have any news on season 2B of Owl House, we will be getting right back into Amphibia. I think we've taken enough of a break from that. It's been a good few weeks. It's been like 5 weeks or so, 6 weeks technically, I guess it'll be, since we watched, and it's like I think I'm comfortable going back into that now. So we'll do some more Amphibia, and we'll kind of go from there. But again, I apologize to everyone who really likes this. You are still fully allowed to like it. Just remember, this is all my personal opinion, my viewpoints. Please just acknowledge that. I'm not saying you can't enjoy it. I'm not trying to influence your views on it at all. So, I do apologize, though, to everyone who wanted to continue to hear my thoughts or whatnot, or see how I thought things eventually went down. But it's like, maybe I'll watch someone else's. Like, I know there's a reactor I'm watching. I can't think of his name right now. I could check real quick. I know there's a reactor I'm watching who's actually reacting to this series right now. I see the videos like pop up in my subscriptions like every so often, and it's like I'm like avoiding like seeing what like titles are or anything, but still, I'm still like noticing that they're there. Let me see if I can find it here, because I think I saw a video in there for it today. So I'm saying, like, you could check out his videos. Mega Reacts, yes. Mega, like MEGA space Reacts. And apparently he is currently on episode 21 of season 1. At least on YouTube. I don't know if he has more, like, on a Patreon or whatnot, but yeah, so maybe I'll check out more, like, with him, and maybe, like, having it cut up and everything, just watching it with his reactions will help, maybe. But yeah, I can't continue doing this as a reaction series. It would bother me way too much. And I would rather keep my reactions to stuff that I, at least to some degree, enjoy. Because while Amphibia is definitely not the best in that regard, it's definitely improved a lot more than where it started. But either way, I again apologize, and for now, thank you so much for understanding and for continuing to tune in. I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.